I don't make the work for other people, you know. I make the work for me. And if it's a resonance with other people, then that's fine. I think that you can only do that. You can only create work that interests you. You know, you can't make work for an audience. I'd never do that. I'm not interested in doing that. And luckily, most of the stuff that I produce, somebody uses, and it's always been received quite well. I like to be funny. I don't like to be po-faced about art, you know. I think it's not great. I love to be able to make jokes about art, you know, and break that illusion about fine art, you know, or the art world, you know. All of that kind of stuff. I hate all that. I'm not really interested in that whatsoever. I love to poke fun at it, actually, and I think humour is a big part of what I do. If you are an artist, the work that you make reflects you as a person. You know, your personality shines through for that, you know. And I think that that's what it does with me. I'm quite brash, you know, quite loud. That's definitely shows through. Very early, I wanted to be Cartier-Bresson. And so I managed to scrape together some money to buy a Leica camera, and I bought a Leica 3C. I used to just cycle around the city, everywhere in the city, and just photograph everything that I saw. Cartier-Bresson's idea was that if you see a really interesting backdrop, you can wait there until something happens. That's not always true, but a lot of times it was. And so you become addicted to doing that. You become a hunter. You want to get the next best picture, your next thing. And so that's what I did. I wandered around the city on my bike, travelling everywhere. Meadowbank to the Powder Hall racetrack, Leith, Morningside, the castle, anything, anytime that there was any events happening, I would go to. All of that sort of stuff, I loved it, you know, I thought it was great. Recently now, with funding from Napier, I've digitised that whole archive, which has hardly been seen at all. It's a whole archive of Edinburgh in the 70s, which is absolutely no longer there. Actually, for a lot of these, there isn't really a story because they're done in the sense of Cartier-Bresson, who was, of course, for any budding photographer, a hero. So I never actually engaged with any of these people. I never actually asked this guy, is it okay if I take a photograph of you? I just went up, had my camera there, and took a photograph. I just love the dog. The dog's great, isn't it? Look at the dog. The dog's like, right, what's happening? What's he doing? Has he got food? This is what we want to know. So this is my Leica camera that I use for most of all of these photographs. It's, as you can see, quite beat up. The case is actually falling apart. But it does say Leica on the front here, so it is the original case. Normally Leica cameras, they have a 50mm lens on them, a standard 50mm lens, but this has a 35mm lens on it, which I preferred for mostly everything. Even today, this is just a beautiful little sound that hardly makes a noise at all, and that's what was beautiful about these cameras. So as you can see, this one's a bit tarnished and stuff like that. It's got you know, marks on it and scores on it and stuff like that, so it's not in pristine condition, but it is a kind of beautiful thing. So this is in Dalry Road, and this is a little lady looking in a hairdresser's. And my daughter's a hairdresser, and she was amazed at the prices. Like there's a little, because you can see the price list of these things and how much stuff costs. It's really great. There's a sort of sadness to this photograph because it looks like it's clear that this woman really can't afford to get her hair done in these places, but it's quite nice just to look in, you know. This one I'm going to show you is from a series that I did called Hoffman's Circus. And this was a circus on a piece of waste ground near the bottom of Dundas Street. I think there's insurance buildings there now, but at the bottom of Dundas Street. And it was a big piece of waste ground, and so the circus just set themselves up there. And I spent the whole day photographing the circus. Well, I think if I look upon it from now, historically looking back, I think, wow, that's a really interesting photograph, you know. And the composition is great as well. So I think from now, I think it's really great. From then, I didn't actually use this one particularly. I used other ones, but I didn't use this. And I don't know why, I just didn't. It has another sensibility now that it didn't have then. To rediscover these is fascinating, you know. I haven't had time to go through them all because I have other things that I'm doing just now that limits me from actually looking at them all. And I would really like to make a book from these, which I'm starting to think about now. I couldn't continue doing this forever. I mean, you know, that genre, you know, going out in the streets and taking photos, I felt this has come to an end here. I married, and we had at least one child then, and I was like, oh, you have to go and get a proper job here. And so I got a job at Edinburgh University as a technician. That was great as well, and they had medium format cameras. And so I had a cardboard box with bungees on the back of my bike, and I put my Mia press camera into that, my Metz flash gun into that, my tripod round my neck on a bit of rope. I think I just went into shops and said, could I take a photograph in your shop? And people would say, yeah, all right, why do you want to do that? I don't know. But I realised that the camera was a key to get into places. And if you said, oh, I'm a student just doing a project, they would go, right, okay, that's fine. So because you were non-threatening, there was no angle from you. And so that was great. So I got into lots and lots of places, tea rooms, old factories, shops, all of that sort of stuff. But I never took these photographs thinking that, as a document, thinking that they would be historic in a way. I wasn't interested in that whatsoever. I think it was just inherently nosiness, you know. I wanted to get into these places. Because people used to say to me, why do you want to photograph in here? Look at this. It was like, but I came to realise when I was doing this exhibition at the City Arts Centre that these were like theatrical sets. As you go to the theatre and before the curtain opens, and then just when the curtain opens and you see the set there in front of you, and before the actors come onto the stage, that's what I was photographing. I was born in Stirling, in the Raploch, and I stayed at the top of the Raploch, very close to the Back of Hill Bar, in 4 Burn Street. And in these days, the Raploch was quite a notorious area. But actually, I found it actually all right. We never really had any issues with that. It was really quite good. I stayed in a council house, a semi-detached council house with a garden, very near what was called the Gowan Hill. And then once you went to the Gowan Hill, then there was the castle above that. So there was lots of places that you could play around about there. That hill that the castle stands on was a wonderful source of adventure. My niece sent me a photograph of my aunt and her as a small child standing in the living room of our house. I thought, that's really interesting, that, you know, that photograph. And I'd always felt it'd be really nice just as a kind of nostalgic thing to recreate that. And also, it was tangerine. And I have to say, I do think that at that time, that my mother must have been really forward thinking there, because it was quite fashionable in a way. Yep. I'll just cut this off here. I'm not sure there would be many people, certainly that I knew, that had a house which was tangerine, and also a painting by Van der Side on the wall. I'll tidy that up in a bit, but that's the kind of cupboard that I would use for that. And this was a wee alcove thing here. Oh yeah, need to glue this bit up again actually. Hot glue guns, brilliant things. And it was just a kind of quirkiness about it. A Sobel television which opened up and closed with little shutters. And it was just really interesting. It looked to me as if it was a set. And I thought, one day I'm going to try and recreate that. And then I got this offer of an exhibition in Stirling and thought, that would be brilliant to do a wall in my house in that gallery space. And so this is why I've got this built now, here. It was just, I think, a sense of nostalgia, and also, could I recreate that? And this is me with a Davy Crockett hat just poking my head through a hole. And this is just, I've just kept this for ages. I don't know how it hasn't ever been lost, but it's still here. And this is a picture of my mum that I found just in the studio recently, so I'm putting that in as well. I tried to match the tiles here with this photograph, and they're all right, they matched all right, but I think the fireplace turned out pretty good in the end. And oh, yeah, I have also this, which is, when my mother would used to sit here, the teapot would always be here, like that, and our cup would be here as well. This picture here, by an artist called Van der Side, I'd researched a bit about him actually. A genuine artist, Van der Side, and I think that Woolworths sold these paintings. He did quite a few different types. I'm not sure if it's the original of that or not, because I actually went on to eBay, and I've got, this is a wee picture of in my little studio. I've got 3 of them. Somebody, some kid must have painted Dracula teeth on one. So you can just about see it there. And I think it did say it was slightly damaged when I got it, but so I now have 3 of these actually. And I never ever thought that I would actually use them, but there you are. So I started using cardboard because it was cheap, and you could paint it, and you could manipulate it, and you could sculpt it, and you could do all sorts of things with it. And so it was a wonderful material that I've used all my life. So I know how to cut cardboard, I know how to tear cardboard, I know, and it gives you, I think, that the tearing of cardboard, the insides of cardboard have a certain resonance about them. They have a tackiness about them that appeals to me totally. And another picture that I'm going to show at the exhibition in Stirling is one called The Antechamber of Ramesses V in the Valley of the Kings. And it was an old room at the very top of this tenement block, and I couldn't open the door very easily. It just pushed, like, get this door open. And inside, the roof had been leaking, so the walls were damp, and it looked like a kind of chamber somehow. And so I created a kind of Egyptian theme in there. I'm really interested in talking about the world, politically and socially, what the world is like. I mean, even that picture, the Ramesses picture, there's a newspaper which says huge bill ahead for housing. And so it's about kind of poverty and about like decay. And so mostly all the images I make are about political or social in some ways, which is kind of why I like Bruegel in that sense, you know. So the Bruegel paintings, I started because I loved the work of Bruegel anyway. I mean, everybody does, you know, like the Four Seasons and all that stuff. And Bruegel, amazing artist, you know. And so I started off producing Blind Leading the Blind. And of course, you have to now do some research into that. What is this about? Why is this like this? Why did he produce this? The same question as to why did I do it? It's because the more I read about Bruegel, the more I realised that these were not just interesting paintings like landscape paintings or you just do them for this reason. They were politically charged. They were socially charged. And I loved that about Bruegel because it's kind of how I work in a way. And I loved that idea from, you know, that resonance from like 1560, 1580, that Bruegel was talking, well, let me say, I was talking the same language as Bruegel was talking. And I loved that synergy over these hundreds of years. That things haven't changed that much, in a sense, you know. The political charge that he had then was probably slightly subdued because, you know, you could be hanged or you could be tortured for these things. So they were subtle messages in his paintings, but nonetheless, they were there if you wanted to look for them. To me, that was what was really, really, really interesting about Bruegel's work. That and the fact that I see a Bruegel like Magpie on the Gallows, for instance. Could I recreate that somehow? Would that be possible to do? It would be difficult, you know. It's very complex work, so it'd be difficult to do. But I think, you know, if you're not going to challenge yourself, what's the point? What I realised was that Bruegel was also constructing images. So in a sense, I felt a sort of synergy with that because that's what I was doing, constructing that. It just was different tools. I thought, it'd be quite a nice idea to just use myself in these images. Not because I'm narcissistic, it's because if I got somebody else to do it, I would have to direct them and figure out how they were doing it and could you move this, could you move that? And I just thought, do you know what, it's easy to do it myself. This is my studio. It's my garage really. So I use this quite a lot for working at home. Today I'm doing a single image and it's one of Bruegel's 12 plates. So I just put this jacket on because it's quite similar to the jacket that he wore there. So this is one of the 12 plates that Bruegel made, and they're proverbs, and this is called Roses Before Swine. A piece that was made in 1560, and as you can see there's two pigs in it, and one of the pigs will, and these pigs will be these pigs. So I'll just photograph these and drop these pigs in. He made these literally on oak plates. So they're quite small and he just painted them on oak plates, and they're 12 proverbs, Netherlandish proverbs, and this is one of them. There's a range of these and I'm going to do two, well I intended doing 12 and I may still do that, but I'm certainly going to do two. And this is going to be one of them. So no, I don't want to match it exactly. In fact, all of the stuff that I use for any image that I do, I never buy. I just use stuff that's lying around the house, actually. Tried to stick that bit of wire around there. I might actually hot glue that wire on there, but right, let's get into character. Looking indifferent, I think. So I've got to think, I'm throwing these beautiful roses to pigs. How do I feel about that? I'm okay with that, I think, but I'm going to have to go and look straight forward. I'm not looking at the pigs. Oddly enough, he's not looking at the pigs, he's just looking straight forward. So you become an actor in this stage set, head up, looking at the distance. And so my pictures are quite big, and I've heard people say, don't you get kind of embarrassed by seeing yourself in these pictures? And the truth is, I don't, because it's not me. I'll try that. It's actually somebody else. You put yourself into the character. I mean, lots of times when I was starting off doing these things, I looked like a Russian Tsar. I would look so wooden. But the blanket's not bad, actually. And it would be, oh my God, this is terrible. I'm never going to manage to do this, you know. It's just ridiculous. That blanket has possibilities. You've got to be in character. Like if it's the blind leading the blind, you've got to be a person who can't see and who is holding on to the next person and walking along. How would you do that? How does that work? And then it became a lot easier to do. This foot is out to this side a wee bit, but I don't need the feet in it just now, so I'll do them later. It's not me, it's somebody else. It's another actor. So that works actually fine for me. I really like doing that. Adding shadows and bits onto it, so because it makes it, in some ways it makes it less like a photograph and more like a kind of hybrid between a painting and a photograph. So you can add these things like so.